There we go.
Are you live?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get on there then. Apparently I can. All right.
Computer is in the way. Do that. That works. Okay.
So I figure once we I guess we're on here now. Yeah.
We are on air now. We gotta wait for some people to show up before you show them your cool thing.
And then I'll move that out of the way so you can center yourself.
Hey everybody. Come on in. We have a little excitement.
Well, now it's listing me as, that's cool though.
DIY Coyote, all right. Hey everybody, welcome to the live show. This is going to be the name of Ian's new channel, is DIY Coyote. So I guess that worked.
Yeah, well, there's somebody on there with us, but I guess we're off to a slow start today.
Well, it always takes a few minutes. It's only 2 o'clock right now.
Today isn't some special day or something, is it? July 14th?
Nope, not that I know of. Not here, anyway. We don't get the people immediately, except for the few diehards who haven't said hello yet. There's Aaron. Hello. Hi, Aaron. How are you doing today? Yeah, there's another few people who've shown up. Ian has been working on this thing over here and he wanted to show it off. Grateful Owl says hi. Hi, Grateful. Aaron says good but hot. Okay. Coyote says please feel free to participate even if you are a beginner.
So should I turn on or should I wait yet?
I'll give it a few minutes.
I'll turn it on now and I'll turn it on again in a few minutes.
Okay. You want to say what this is?
Well, it should kind of show what it is. It's called a Jacob's Ladder. Uses about 6,000 to 9,000
There we
volts.
go. I can see it. Whee! He built that the other day.
Keeps getting stuck at the top though because I think they're clean enough. But
Sundrop says, hey everyone.
yes,
Hi, Sundrop.
This is to advertise my new do-it-yourself channel, which I don't actually have any videos up yet, but I will have them up. At least something in a couple of days. Going to be all kinds of do-it-yourself stuff, from audio stuff.
Grateful Owl says that's neat. Yes, it is quite neat.
Yeah.
Coat hanger and a water bottle.
Yeah, well, with a 9,000 volt transformer.
Right.
But pretty much, yeah.
Yes, they can see the transformer. Okay. It's not close enough to catch anything on fire, so no need to worry. Grateful Owl says, sweet, I love do-it-yourself stuff.
Thankfully, it's not screwing up our YouTube channel, I hope. Hope everybody can hear everything. I better turn it off just in case. That thing probably generates a lot of RF interference.
It could.
Yeah. Do you want to center yourself, or you?
Well, I'm not sure exactly.
Okay, if you're good, we'll just.
Well, I don't know how to center myself unless that's moved. I mean,
well, that was the goal.
Yeah.
Or the idea was I'm going to move this over. So
right.
Away.
So then I move myself over this way.
Yep.
Yeah, that works. Okay, we're good. Now it's me. All right. And Grateful Owl said it's fine. It didn't interfere.
Okay, good. That was a little worried.
Awesome.
Get the rest way off.
All right. No more distractions from our magical stuff, although it looks pretty magical. Okie dokie. Julia says grins as she slips into her spot. Greetings, everyone. Hi, Julia. Welcome. Yeah, So it turns out that our bunny is magic, I think. we we found the little guy on top of a shelf standing between our router and our modem this morning, just sitting there. And how he managed to get up there, we're still not entirely sure. But yeah, so
The
that was.
amazing thing was nothing was disturbed. He was sitting right in this little blank spot between all his wires and cables and things.
He is a climber. Sandcat says hi, everyone. Hi, Sandcat. And he also did he created a different kind of route for him to take this morning. It wasn't quite an obstacle course, but he has this little red teddy bear, and there's a little blue mouse that's for the cat, but he has adopted it. And I took a picture of him sleeping between the two of them last night, so we know where they were. And he maneuvered them and changed them and put the teddy bear sitting up next to his little hutch, and then the mouse over on the side. And then he ran and ran and ran and ran and jumped and did spins and came back and ran up to the hutch and then stopped and touched the nose of the teddy bear and then turned around and ran
with
away.
his nose.
With his nose. They just did a nose touch and then ran off. It was hysterical. It's like, I think we have a genius bunny.
He's so cute.
It is adorable. Julia says, haha, agrees with Sandcat. How could your bunny not be magic? Yeah, that's true. But he is very surprising, and he is creating new ways for us to have to figure out how to keep him from getting into places he's not supposed to be. Keeping us on our toes. Very entertaining. But yeah, I think he's a little bunny genius. Never seen such behavior. I mean, apparently he gets bored easily and he's trying to come up with new challenges for himself, maybe. I don't know. Sandcat says, hi, Julia.
At it anyway.
He is very creative. Sandcat says, hi, Julia, how are you? Yeah, so today is sort of like, a normalish kind of day on the coast. Not too super windy, so that's kind of nice. And, yep, things seem to be going well as far as we can tell in our house at any rate. Making sure I'm still on. It says I have an excellent connection. So
good.
So far that's working well. New configuration. So what do we all want to talk about today, besides our magical bunny? Julia says, oh, doing good. Hot here right now. Mid-90s. Sits with the door to the office closed so the AC coolness can build up. Yeah. My sister's in Virginia, and apparently she was at 95 when I was talking to her earlier this morning. So they're definitely having another heat wave, and the humidity was beginning to go up too, so it's making it even less comfortable. So yeah, it was kind of amazing that Hurricane Beryl continued to break all records and spawn the most tornadoes of any hurricane in history. That's just like, yep, the gift that kept on giving. But hey, weather is an interesting thing in and of itself. Julia says, well, I'm in North Carolina, so yeah, southern summers and oddly few local storms to cut the heat. Sandcat says, I'm a housekeeper for my job. Last week my ring fell off, and as I leaned over to pick it up, I found a ring under the bed. Small synchronicity. I handed it in, of course. Well, how cool is that? A ring found a ring. It must have been something that needed to be found. That's pretty awesome. I started doing some work last week with a woman in Serbia who seems, in my opinion, to have accidentally brought home some kind of a forest type of creature, spirit, forest mountain kind of thing. And so we're going to see how that goes. I saw it quite clearly when I did a mental trip over there to see what was going on, and so we talked, and we're going to be checking in with each other again probably in the next couple of days to see how things are going. She is a geologist, geology engineer. So she's pretty confident where this thing came from, and she's going to take it back. So I'm pretty jazzed about that. I never know when people contact me. I had somebody contacted us this week, and I posted about it on my Facebook page, tried to get me involved in a discussion on New Age versus witchcraft, and turned out she was trying to proselytize her Christian beliefs and let me know that I was bad. So
Gotta watch out.
minor annoyance.
You know, they gotta foist their views on somebody else.
Yep.
I don't know why it is, you know.
Grateful Al
Gotta
says,
make everybody like me, and then the whole thing would be monotone.
yep. I like variety myself.
Me too.
One of the things that makes life more interesting
Yep.
is variety and experience and expertise and interests and all of that jazz.
Yep, I agree completely.
Yep. And then I had a weird thing happen. I was doing a long distance healing for Jacqueline, and at the end of it, some person that contacted me like 4 years ago contacted me again to tell me that her brother was missing, and she's from India, which she felt was an important piece of information. And I'm like, okay, I don't find missing people just anywhere on the planet. It's like, it's not my expertise. And I looked at our communications, and the same exact thing happened 4 years ago. She contacted me to help find her brother, and I told her then that that's not what I do. And I'd light a candle and hope that the thing, resolved itself in the right. Apparently, it did, because he's missing again. I can only assume. And so I'm pretty confident this is some kind of a weird scheme, because we're not really friends, and
Scam scheme of
yeah,
some
some
sort.
kind of a scam. My son thinks it's one of those, like, get someone drawn into a crisis situation and make you feel sorry for them and want to help them, etc., and generate all that energy, and then like hit them with the, here's how you can help, give me money or something. I don't know, but I was like, okay. She sent me a picture of him and everything, and then when she finally realized I wasn't going to do anything, she removed all of the information that she had given me. And so I just blocked her at that point. I'm like, she wasn't even friends. She was just some random person who had gotten a hold of me at one point, and I happened to see it. So it's like, it's really weird on the internet sometimes. You never know what it's going to do. Julia says, Matt, ugly people do and say ugly things and expressing their ugly beliefs. Yeah. Sandcat says, it's cold here, 6 degrees centigrade. I love it. It's been very foggy, which I love too. Yes, I'm one of those people that love winter. Well, I'm so happy you're in a place where winter is happening. So lucky you. It's a good time of year for you then. Yay. But, trying to deal with people and maintain boundaries is all part of the process. Grateful Al says winter can be beautiful. Oh yeah, I loved winters up north. I mean, it was minus 40, which is the same in centigrade and Fahrenheit for 6 weeks out of the winter. So it was a good solid cold.
I don't know. I can't deal with it. 10-degree weather is about the coldest I've been in, and that was enough for me.
Yeah, minus 40, it's like you're definitely there. If you have the right equipment and the right clothing and so forth, it's not so bad. And if you're in a shelter, but the thing that I found about it that was amazing was it was so cold, it froze all of the water particles in the air, and there were these tiny little floating ice crystals everywhere. And when I went outside during a full moon, the moon would light all of these ice crystals up, and they'd be floating around your face. And and you'd be walking through like a sea of stars. It was just the coolest thing. So no matter the environment, there's always some kind of beauty to make up for the extreme, I think.
That sounds kind of cool.
It was very cool. Of course, the Northern Lights helped as well. Getting to see them.
Of course, I've just never been one for cold. I suppose I could learn, if I learned how to do it, probably wouldn't be so bad. But
Well, you find out why you have to have something on your face, because if it gets too cold, you take a deep breath, your lungs freeze. So you don't want to do that. Julia says, winter is so nice for me too. I tend to have a very high tolerance for cold and a very low tolerance for hot. Was born in October, so that's a good time of year weather-wise for me. Cool.
yeah, that's a lot like Siofra. She has hot weather really affects her.
Adversely,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, a lot sooner than it affects me. We could be in the hot weather doing the same thing for the same time, and she'll get affected a lot long before I do.
Yeah, I think I've had heat exhaustion a couple of times, close to heat stroke, so it's made me more sensitive to it at this point. Grateful Al says, I've been in Vegas for 3 months during the hottest part of the year. Oh no! Watched rain evaporate halfway to the ground. Wow. Yeah, they've been having record heat in Las Vegas. It's been pretty bad. Marshall says, I spelled for weight loss, developed sinus teeth pain on a liquid protein diet because of getting healthier now. Well, good. I'm glad you're getting healthier. Grateful Al says, it does me too. I get heat stroke if I'm not careful. Yeah. I turn bright red, and it's a bad sign when my cheeks turn red. I thought it was interesting. I was reading an article about water consumption, and they were saying that the notion that everybody has been promoting, that you want to drink enough water so that your urine doesn't have a color to it, is bad for you, because that means that your kidneys have to work overtime.
It's flushing out all your minerals.
Yeah, so I
If
thought
you
that
do
was kind
too
of
much,
interesting. Sundrop says, I like autumn and winter. I'd rather wrap up in clothes than hardly nothing in summer. Weather is the way it is wherever you are. Astra says, hey everyone. Hi, Astra.
Of course, when I was down in Fort Benning, Georgia, running 2 mile runs in like 100-degree heat, I came close to heat. I had heat exhaustion multiple times, but I stopped before it went to heat stroke. But not much you can do when a drill sergeant is like yelling at you to hurry up and continue on. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. They still don't understand that a lot.
Well,
And realize how dangerous it is.
when I went through, it was a lot better than it had been in the past. They used to make everybody run in boots. At least by the time I went in, they were running in tennis shoes. So that was an improvement, but still, it's so hot down there to be running. We'd start off at like 6 in the morning or earlier for the runs because it get hot so early.
Julia says, it's funny, since I have a triad in fire signs, I often wonder that I think I have enough heat astrologically, so I need far less physically, like another slice of cake. Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Don't need any more. Yes, that's enough. Thank you. Well, I have, sun, moon, and my rising sign are all, no, sun and moon are earth signs,
We're both Earth.
and my rising sign is an air sign, but I think I have a lot of other earth in there too.
She's a Capricorn and I'm a Virgo.
Yeah, you're an earthy sign.
Yeah.
Of course, there's only 12 basic personalities on the planet, right? Yeah. Or 24, the positive and the negative. Yeah, like that works. But say, whatever. So, what do we want to chat about? My mom was a Virgo, laughed my ass off, Julia says. Yep, and everybody's different.
Well, I can tell you, Siofra's personality is nothing like as normally described as Capricorn. She's down to earth and grounded, but that's, they always come up with all these negative things, and she doesn't fit any of them. The negative about about Capricorns, and
I know Capricorn's got a bad rap. I think that's because Saturn's a ruling planet and everybody's
yeah,
afraid
and
of Saturn.
everybody thinks Saturn is awful. But
Yeah.
like everything else, all of them.
It all depends on your
yeah.
perspective, how you
Yeah.
choose to look at it. Sandcat says, I'm a Cancer and it shows. Trey says, where did you live where it was -40? Northern British Columbia, up in the Kispiox Valley. Between Prince George and Prince Rupert, the northernmost point on the Yellowhead Highway is Hazelton, and that was the nearest town to the valley where I lived. That was one of the places I lived up there, but that was where it was -40. So yeah. Asher says, laugh out loud. And you know, living in an extreme environment with no power, no running water. I had to chop all my wood. Had to haul the water from the river when we lived down by the river. Yeah, so it was definitely interesting, very different from where I live now and how we live now. I really appreciate having a pellet stove and
Yes.
having running water and electrical lights and all the other stuff
I'll
that
tell you,
we
I
have.
love tech devices so much. I don't know how I would have survived that lack of technology. Actually, I probably would have gotten into it. I like nature and outdoors and stuff too. But I love technology. I guess I'm both.
Astor says, I don't know enough about astrology. Trey says, wow, I'm in Minnesota. I admire the beauty of the North. That's amazing. It is definitely an extreme environment, but absolutely beautiful. And when I lived up there,
She
there
did
were,
this with kids, by the way.
yeah, by myself at one point, just me and my two kids. I was a single parent. So that was also interesting. And yeah, my children had more experiences with wildlife than the average person. We were talking about them encountering the fox that was interested in their lunch when they were waiting for the school bus at the end of our mile-long driveway just yesterday when my son came over. And you know, we had more bears than people, and we on top of that we had cougar and bobcat and moose and wolves and um, we had both black bears and grizzly bears with the bear population, and it was very alone and isolated. We had golden eagles and bald eagles, and lots of ravens, owls. It was pretty spectacular environment for getting acquainted with things that weren't human, and the silence of the deep woods in a place like that is hard to describe to someone who hasn't been in it. And it's like this deep in your bones kinds of silence, even though there's the sounds of the birds, the woodpeckers, and the creaking of the wind going through the trees and so forth. Underneath it all, there's this just huge well of silence. And that helped me to get acquainted with me.
Yeah, I love that. I spent some years living way out in the woods, and I just love that. You get so used to not hearing the traffic noise and stuff. It was wonderful. I'm happy with our house and everything here, but it is in town.
Yep.
But that was, yeah, it ends up being a worthwhile trade-off to own our own place and everything. And yeah, it's good.
Trey says, cool. Julia says, if the whole chart isn't interpreted, then there's only a fraction of understanding from only one planet sign known. I'm a Libra, but it's in 12th house, so it doesn't always show.
Yeah, astrology is complicated, and I'm really bad at math, so I tried learning it for a while, and I decided, as bad as I am at math and stuff, it's just, it doesn't appeal to me, even though it seems to have some validity.
I had my chart professionally done, and it said I was a horrible person who hated other people and wanted to keep everything for myself.
Well, a lot of that's the person that interprets it.
Yes.
I mean, Saturn means a lot of things, and
I think it
there,
was a program that they used or whatever and printed it up and sent it to
oh
me.
yeah, I used to have one of those back when I had a Commodore 64. If anybody remembers those, I had an astrology program, a little biorhythms program, and
Oh, I remember the
there was a
biorhythms program. I used that
tarot
too.
tarot program that would random. Of course, it had no validity, but it would randomly pop out tarot cards for you, like it was making a reading.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Marshall says you become one with that silence, unable to distinguish yourself from the nature.
yes,
Well, yes,
that's what I need.
that's exactly correct. And then you know that you are actually a part of nature, not separate from it. And that's part of the problem that we have as a society and a culture in general in a lot of places is that we've gotten so away from nature in and of itself that we think that the things that we do and that we surround ourselves with are actually life when there's so much more to it than that. Astor says, is Mother Earth a living entity? It feels like she is. I think so.
Yeah, I got we have this power spot that we found up at an old cabin. An old, what kind of cabin was it? It was
It's a
for
horse camp.
horse. Well, I mean, what was the cabin originally? It was
Oh,
an
it
old,
was a, I think a fire lookout
like a fire lookout or
or
something.
something.
Anyway, but I got an interesting view of Mother Nature, which I wanted to paint in a painting, and unfortunately my right arm has stopped working, so I can't paint at the moment. But Mother Nature showed herself to me as a face directly under my feet. And the symbolism was so powerful right at the moment, it just really affected me because that's what Mother Nature is. She's beautiful. She's under our feet. All we have got to do is shuffle our feet to destroy her, you know. It was that man is so powerful to affect nature. We need to be more cautious and stuff. And so that was really unexpected to me. And I took that as a real message at the time. And I still do.
Marshall says it's a strange experience, mind altering. Yeah. And if it's not mind altering, you're just so completely and totally blocked off, there's really no point. Julia says, yeah, you need a lot of objectivity to interpret a chart, and Saturn was a god of agriculture. No one associates
Well,
that with that planet's interpretation
not
or the
only
sign
that,
rules.
but everybody,
Capricorn.
when everybody says karma, they think bad karma, but there's also good karma, and Saturn is just as responsible for giving you your good karma. So whether Saturn is good or bad to you depends entirely on your own actions.
Yep.
I mean, if you get judged and get bad karma, or you get judged and get good karma, it depends on you. So blaming Saturn is just silly.
I agree. Astra says, poor nature, I'm starting to love her. I cried
Yep.
over a bug once. Aw.
Yep.
Well, that's the thing. Life and death are intertwined. That's nature. It's not one thing or the other. It's
Yeah.
both.
I get kind of, I don't care for like some things in nature, and I have a problem with bugs. It's more of a phobia, almost a phobia type of thing. But I once saw a little baby slug, and I couldn't believe it. I thought it was so cute. It was a little tiny with little bitty antennas poking around, you know. It was like,
Babies, everything
yep,
seem to be cute.
yep,
Astra says, I normally hate bugs.
yep,
So it was an unusual experience for her to empathize with a
yeah.
bug.
I have nothing against them in that sense. I just like, it's like a phobia where like I see them and it just like freaks me out on some level.
Because they look like
That's
aliens.
not mental, you know. It's like
Yeah.
just gives me the creeps for no apparent reason. I don't have anything wrong, you know, nothing mental against them. It's just probably something happened in childhood when I was a little kid or something. I don't know.
Grateful Owl says, little jumping spiders are adorable. Well, not if they jump on your hair like they did on mine. I did not find that adorable. It made me leap over a table and run to the middle of the room when I was a kid. Sandcat says, I love bugs. The only animal I'm scared of is snakes. I
Yeah,
like snakes.
they don't bother me too much, but that's because I was actually around them, though not in a good way. There are a lot of rattlesnakes around where I grew up, but I just kind of got used to seeing them to a certain extent, I guess, so they don't really bother me. Of course, I respect them enough to stay the heck away from rattlesnakes and the
Well,
like,
yeah,
but
you got to respect nature
yeah,
or it'll kill you.
generally I'm okay with snakes, though, other than
Beth says, hi,
poisonous ones. Yeah.
everyone. Julia says, hey there, Beth. Grateful Owl says, Google snakes with hats. Apparently it's funny. Some dude says, peace, peace. Hi, some dude. Julia says, ooh, Google's that. Sandcat says, hi, Beth. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, that makes me want to Google that.
Now he's going to Google that. I'm not Googling that because I'm like live on screen. So me Googling would probably be distracting.
Well, that pretty much describes it. They have lots of little hats on the snakes.
Aw, that's pretty cute.
Yeah.
Julia says, oh, those are adorable pics. Yeah. So now we're all looking at hats on snakes.
Yeah. Snakes with hats. Okay.
Beth says, sandcat, heart.
See, there's something you never get without the internet.
That's
One of
true.
the reasons I'm glad we have the internet, snakes with hats.
And whoever thought of that is sort of fascinating. Asher says, does elemental energy look like water? Because I'm seeing Fae everywhere in nature, and when I look into the woods, I see a clear rippling energy that pulsates. It's wild. Well, energy by itself looks a lot like water when you start to see it with your eyes.
Yeah,
It,
if you use the word elemental in the sense, make sure not to get it confused up with like elemental, like water, fire, air, and earth energies, because generally the energy you're seeing, especially if it's Fey or something, it's probably not just necessarily one element,
right.
but it can be just a general energy.
And I think that that is a nature of how we interpret energy when our clairvoyant vision opens up enough to be able to see that. It's one of the manifestations is that rippling light effect, because I see that too, and I think it's normal and probably easier to see when you're in nature than like in the middle of a city, for example. Julia says, wonder what that means. Snakes, earth signs. Snakes go along the ground, getting some good vibes. Just please be a snake I can identify as not poisonous.
Yep.
Astra says, yeah, they look like fire, water, and sparkling.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, thanks. I'm normal. Thank goodness. Or thank God or goddess or whoever.
Yep. And of course, snakes represent wisdom in India, especially the king cobra,
I had a
symbol of
past life
Kundalini.
memory once where I remembered an incident where snakes, a large snake like a python, was used as a like a truth detector
Yeah.
or lie detector. Someone in the village was like accused of doing some heinous act, and the priestess of the village would wrap the snake, have the snake wrap itself around you, and then ask you the questions. And if the snake sensed, I guess, a change in your body chemistry, I'm thinking, from lying or something like that, then it would start to squeeze the person. And if they were telling the truth and were unafraid and so forth, then it wouldn't. So sort of a weird kind of thing. I don't know the any other context except that I remembered that. I met a person who was there and meeting her activated the memory.
Well, apparently Google has a great big giant bias towards Christianity. Because I'm doing a search on serpents.
Oh
All
yeah.
I get, my entire page is all biblical quotes. The serpent symbolizing evil deceives Eve.
Try a different
The serpent's
parameter.
lie. Film on snake handling Pentecostals.
You can put a different search parameter in there and say ancient worship of snakes or something. You might come up with something different. I always have to
Yeah.
change how I ask things of Google
Well, you know.
because the bias is definitely there. There's no
Yeah,
doubt.
Google didn't used to be biased. In fact, they used to have a motto: "We are not evil." But
Yes.
then that all went away when our wonderful voters threw away net neutrality and made it so that we don't have to treat websites equal. Google can like do anything it wants to be abusive and what's the word, discriminative. Since we voted that in, we voted in to Google to be discriminate against websites.
As
Sorry,
much
that
as
still
they want.
ticks me off. Yeah.
It's one of your buttons.
Yep, it is one of my buttons, and now their search results suck by comparison to what they used to be.
Asher says, I was worried for a second. Grateful Owl says, kind of like Wonder Woman's whip. Yeah. Asher says, seraphim means fiery serpent. Some
Well,
dude says maybe it's because the snake is more in tune with energy and because the human failed the vibe check, it got detected as a threat and then bit. Well, it didn't bite, it squeezed, but yeah, I think so.
yeah, I once had to do a thing on lie detectors for college, and one of the things I ran across in doing research was they had an ancient stone that supposedly you put your hand in there,
Oh,
and
that
then you
guy.
had to tell the truth or he bit your hand off.
Yeah, I remember that stone.
Yep. Yeah.
That was a pretty. It shows up in movies every so often,
Yep.
where someone has to put their hand in that slim little slot.
Yep.
Like ah. And I think people that lie are afraid of that, so they never actually get that far, and they already give themselves away. But it was kind of an interesting little memory. sometimes you never know what sort of memories are going to pop up from past lives, and a lot of times they are generated by circumstances and people that were either remind you of or were actually in that, that particular memory from a different lifetime. And a lot of times they just sort of pop up randomly. I don't get those much anymore because I'm busy doing other things. And
Well, I just researched this because it was in a thing I was doing for the psychology class on college, but I ran across that. There, you can find pictures and stuff of it online, that particular stone.
you remember the name of the stone? Currency
No,
Riddler says old places like monuments can spark those memories too. Oh yeah. My sister, my youngest sister, was in France with my mother, and they got separated from their tour group. And my sister knew the layout of the Palace of Versailles from the bottom up. And she took my mother on a tour. I think she was like 12 or 14 or somewhere in there. I'm not sure. It was after I left home. Um, and yeah, she just knew it. It was just all there, bam, in her head. So it is interesting. Makes me wonder if I end up somewhere I've been before, what could happen. And I think sometimes the energy of a place can be so powerful it can almost feel like it's your own memory, but not necessarily, because some people can read objects and locations and things like that. So it's always interesting.
yep, psychometry, such.
Some dude says, well, you can pass a physical lie detector if you're a master of your body. And Trey says,
It can be learned. You can learn to do that. Yep.
Trey says there are subscription search engines that are supposedly unbiased, but then you have to pay for them. It used to be free. Some
Well,
dude says depends on if Neuralink will break that.
you have to be careful with the subscription search engines that are supposedly unbiased because some of them are, but some of them, while they're unbiased, they bring in results from Google, which is biased. So, but yeah, I've tried a whole bunch of different ones. I use some different ones at times. A lot of times, just because Google doesn't give me the results. Sorry, I know we're not it's not a subject for our channel, so I'll drop it.
And Gaga says if you're good, you could probably trick yourself into believing your lie for a short period. Well, some people are naturally believe the lies that they tell themselves. So in that case, they wouldn't know
Yeah,
they were
they
lying.
actually did an old Mythbusters episode. I don't remember what the trick was, but they learned how to lie or how to do it, how to beat a regular polygraph machine. I think it was Grant Imahara. Learned how to do it. Apparently, once you learn how to do it, you can do it pretty easily.
Astra says they may be onto something. Julia says true at some dude. Sometimes you can fail a lie detector test and be truthful. That is why you can't use them as evidence in American courts.
And
Yeah.
that's true too. People get stressed out and stuff, and it
Yeah,
can
because
just
they
like,
only monitor your blood pressure and your heart rate and your breathing and so forth. And
well, EKG and
yeah,
yeah, heart rate.
that's the
So
heart
yeah,
rate. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, some dude says I was babysitting a 5-year-old kid and she told me I was a dinosaur, car, and bird. Okay. Astor says I live near Mount Shasta. My neighbor and I play with the UFOs every week and wonder what they're planning.
Yeah. I'd like to go back to Mount Shasta one of these days. We visited a few times.
Yep, it's been a fun place to be. Sandcat says, can you please talk about raising personal energy? Mine is pretty low and I can't move forward. I want to feel that magical energy that I felt before. Monotony is not fun.
Yeah.
So tapping into the earth, that is how you can recharge your own energy. You don't, personal energy is a misnomer. You've got maybe your bodily functions and so forth, and what you eat that gives you a certain amount of energy to function and whatnot. But if you really want the energy, you got to get it from somewhere bigger. And doing, meditations in the earth and with a tree or connecting to the planet and so forth is the way to go about that. Violet says, hi, Siofra and Ian. I have an opening to listen from 2:30 to 3. I'm attending a Canadian event, Zoom. Super fun weekend. Hi,
Cool.
Violet. Some dude says the trick is box breathing. Currency Riddler says if you tense your muscles when they ask the first initial questions, you'll pass the polygraph test. It'll give off the same spikes when you lie. Well, we're not planning on needing to lie for any reason, so I guess that's fine. Asher says, I don't want to get kidnapped. Well, of course you don't want to get kidnapped.
By Bigfoot.
By Bigfoot. Who would want Bigfoot to kidnap them? I understand they're quite stinky. Trey says, I agree with him. Thank you for sharing. What's his name? I am new.
I'm not sure what.
Who are you talking to? Are you talking to my husband Ian? That would be his name. Asher says, Mount Shasta is full of Bigfoots. Is it Bigfoots or is it big feet? It's always a question. Yes, Asher says, or feet. I didn't even see that.
Yep.
Currency Riddler says, just for educational purposes, of course, wink, wink. Julia says, Bigfoot? Oh no, Bigfoot doesn't want to kidnap me. No, no. Got better fish to fry, sure enough. Asher says, yeah, I hear they are stinking. Yes, that's one of the common threads in all Bigfoot sightings has been the smell. Apparently, bathing is not their cup of tea.
We found a place that had a serious Bigfoot cage at one point. Was it a motel or?
Yeah, that was down
Yeah.
in California. We were
Yeah.
doing a thing for a haunted location down there, and we had to drive down there and spend the night.
They had it made out of big old bars, and maybe it could have held a Bigfoot if they ever could have got one in it.
Sandcat says, I love Bigfoot stories. I think they are fae. I have no clue. Some dude says that Sandcat, I was struggling with that. You can streamline the process by writing a prayer in a different language like Enochian, Latin, Hebrew. Sundrop says, do you believe in the Saskatchewan? You mean the Sasquatch. Saskatchewan is the name of the province in Canada, and it is not the name of the beast. They just call it a Sasquatch up there, spelled somewhat different. Oh, I didn't get to spell it. I thought I was spelling it. I've never actually met one. Julia says, decides to carry liquid soap squirt bottle with me anytime I go into the wild after this point. Body spray too. Yeah, clean them up before they get there. Probably make them run away. Trey says, yes, Ian, I agree about the search engine stuff.
Ah, cool. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we have that settled.
Yep.
Astor says, there are Bigfoot sightings in my town, so I don't go near a certain area. My neighbor saw one with a little gray alien pretending to be an owl. Okay, then. Sounds like a good place to avoid.
Yeah, I actually don't want to run into a Bigfoot.
Or an alien.
I know somebody who said he saw a Bigfoot once, but he lies about all kinds of things, so I don't know. Yeah, I just think you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. Bedford.
Ah. That's true. His version of the truth is not always the same as ours. It's kind of a funny thing.
Well, yeah, it's a.
They've had a lot of those sightings here in Oregon, though. Some by police officers. I've read a few accounts out in the hills. There's a lot of mountainous and hilly range in Oregon and stuff like that where there's not very many people around. So,
yeah.
Sandcat says Australia has some really awesome Bigfoot stories. They're called yowies over there. Cool. Seems like about every culture has got something like that.
Yep.
Which makes it interesting, but still not enough actual physical evidence. Sundrop says there's so many interesting creatures out here. Some dude says, is a spirit manifesting considered an alien?
Well, I wouldn't use that term.
I wouldn't either. I mean, the definition of an alien would be a life form representation from someplace other than Earth, by definition. So, if it's a nature spirit, then it's not an alien. That would be by my definition. Sandcat says, I love police supernatural stories. Yeah, they're kind of interesting. Gaga says, if someone has all of your information, like account and social security number, is there anything you can do spiritually to fix the problem?
Well, potentially, there's several things you could do to try to influence the person, which would probably be the best route. If you were good at Barton stuff and you'd made it your way through to his third book, you could turn everything black. There's a method by which you use a particular acacia to turn photographs or anything like that black so they can't be read. So you could literally black out all the information, even from somebody's mind, but you have to be very advanced to do that. So I'd probably recommend for something like that to try to do I don't know, a spell like to make them forget it or to make them give up the idea of using it or something like that. I think
Make
you're,
it so that if they do use it, they get caught immediately and there's a big, huge
yeah,
backlash.
unless you're a really extremely advanced practitioner, you probably have better luck working on the person. Maybe so that they're not interested in remembering the information or something. I don't know. Let's turn it into a gray area there, so it'd be an individual choice if you're talking about making somebody forget something or really affecting somebody that way.
Astra says, aliens visit me and my neighbor. We are attracting the whole variety pack of creatures. There's a cluster of clairvoyants in my complex and we live on a portal. That's always fun. Beth says, northern Mississippi has a lot down there. If you're in the country, they make a loud shriek. Oh, what fun. Astra says, Beth, yes, me and my neighbor were outside once and creature were shrieking at us. Time to go inside. Oh, we have a little skunk in our area that sounds like it's dying. And it shrieks so loud, it's amazing. I was really surprised to discover it was a skunk. I thought for sure it was something bigger, like a raccoon. But we listened to animal noises and stuff, and my granddaughter actually found the soundtrack of what a skunk sounds like, and that was it 100%. So there are some pretty strange sounds that animals can make out there that if you're not familiar with them can be misidentified too. But hey, noises are fun. I remember when I lived up north, the thing that surprised me the most was the sound that a grouse made when it thumped the ground, this tiny little thing thumping the ground, and it sounds like it's a monster smacking something really, really hard. I was like, whoa, that is so strange. Asher says it probably was a skunk. I'm definitely not familiar. You can look up the sound and find out because it's very specific. And that's the sound that they make before they spray in an attempt to not have to spray because spraying takes a lot out of them. It's not something that they like to do because then they're weakened for a longer period of time. And so they make this weird shrieking sound to dissuade whatever it is that's coming at them. Some dude says, I just recently learned about Shodan and securing my webcam on InScam was a scary experience learning that my laptop camera was publicly available, but thankfully I always left the cover on it. It can be hackable for sure. Beth says, Astra, it always seems to happen when it's warm and it's sundown.
I see. So this Shodan is a search engine for internet connected devices. So it searches for devices for you. So you don't even have to have your own software to do that.
Cool.
But for what it's worth, the software has been available to do that for many, many years, unfortunately, for people who want security. So, yeah, we know several people who put a piece of black tape over their webcam when they're using their computer if they're not on the webcam.
Yep. Sandcat says, has anyone ever heard a possum? The sound is terrifying. Yeah. And we checked possums too. That was first it was raccoons and possums and then in desperation a skunk because I thought there's no way, but yep, that's what it was. Astor says skunks are so cute. Too bad they're stinky.
You
Well,
know that
apparently a fixed skunk, a descended skunk, makes a wonderful house pet.
that's what I've heard. I've heard they're great pets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
apparently they're highly intelligent and very friendly and so forth. And if they're descented, you don't have to worry about them getting upset and accidentally like shoo spraying your house, which would definitely be not fun. Currency Writer says Google more like Library of Alexandria.
Yeah, I wonder what we'd have if the Library of Alexandria was still around.
If it hadn't burned
It'd be
down,
amazing, yeah.
yeah, the loss of all of that material, all the knowledge and
Well,
books.
didn't they burn it down?
Yep,
Yeah,
it
that's
was
what I
burnt.
thought. Okay.
Some major a-hole burned it down.
Yep.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's never a good idea to burn books. Just because you disagree with them now doesn't mean you're going to disagree with them later.
But I did burn one once that had such bad energy connected with it that I couldn't manage to banish it out, so I burned it to get rid of the energy.
Yeah, that's different. There were plenty of copies of the book, so.
Yes.
Sandcat says, Google what a bit too wrong is. They are the most amazing animals. Oh, Google what a bit wrong. Okay, I've been too wrong. So Ian's going to do that now. Why not? Find out what they are. It's like there's so many different kinds of creatures that live on the planet. They're everywhere. There's so many I don't know. Millions of species, I'm sure. Would fill a couple of books.
Then there's a bear cat. There's its face.
Oh, he's so cute. Yeah. We actually have a wolverine that's shown up in Oregon on the coast for the first time, actually around Coos County. So it's really gone. They first spotted it around Portland and it's made its way down the coast. So either that or more of them have shown up. It's kind of interesting. Some dude says recently there were restoration efforts made in an ancient Tibetan monastery's library. So far, the progress is 1%. It's a long process, I'm sure, if you're going to be restoring ancient manuscripts. It'd be so difficult, depending on the age of the paper and the conditions and all that stuff. It's quite a skill set to be able to do that. I'm very impressed by people who can do
They
that
can
kind
do
of
some
stuff.
amazing things
Yeah.
nowadays. Yeah.
Sandcat says, I burned a book once. It was a book that terrified me. I've never been scared of a book before. Some minds are so disturbed.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, this was an old black magic grimoire, and I was interested in the information within it, but unfortunately the person who owned it put such bad negative energy into it. Um, they apparently really wanted to use it for really bad and evil purposes, and that's what kept coming off the book. And though, just the printed copy new wouldn't have done that, whoever used it, it was so bad he just burned it.
SL says, hi all. Hi, SL. Gaga says, what's your take on spirits possessing people and the person having somewhat superhuman strength? Is it true or just Hollywood BS? Well, I think there's some just definitely genuine cases. I don't know what all of the mechanisms are that are involved,
Yeah.
whether it is an actual case of true spirit possession or if it's like an altered state that the person gets into, because certainly superhuman strength is something the person can do under the right circumstances.
Yeah,
It
and
is well known.
there are circumstances under which some drugs remove this pain sensation, so people can do extraordinary things they wouldn't normally able to do, but they're also in danger of snapping their own bones with muscular strength because they're not getting the pain sensations.
There's also incredible emotional states in a crisis where people have done things they couldn't do. I heard a story about one guy whose house was on fire and he had just bought a safe and put his most important things in it. And he ran into the house and picked up the safe and ran outside and dropped down the ground and it sunk like 1.5 feet into the ground because it was a very heavy safe. And 4 people couldn't pick it up afterwards. And of course, the stories of a woman who's got a child stuck underneath a car. That's not just anecdotal. That really has happened.
And those things usually a person can't repeat, and
Right.
They couldn't do it if they tried to on purpose.
Right. It has to be extreme circumstance and an instant that happens so quickly that there's no room for doubt or thought process at all. No room to consider that this isn't possible. And because you can't consider it's not possible, you somehow find the strength and the ability to do it. So yeah, it's interesting anyway. Astra says a lot of times it's drugs, psychosis, or disassociation. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. And the thing is that I've never actually encountered a case personally of that. So I don't have any direct experience of seeing somebody who's actually being possessed by a spirit and of a negative nature and making them do things they don't want to do, kind of thing. Currency Writer says it'll feel like a slap on the back of the neck, often induced by trance. Some dude says at Gaga, a spirit can manifest through the earth element. You can also project your cheese, so it's very possible. Crackhead strength is also a real thing. Yeah, T PB
PCP.
PCP is definitely something that gives people superhuman strength for the reasons that Ian noted, the lack of pain receptors. That's one of the things that it does is it gets rid of the pain receptors, and people can actually break a leg and walk on it and not know that that's what they're doing until much later. Adrenaline can make people have super strength. So Sandcat, yeah, that's what I'm talking about is the adrenaline. Astor says, I go into different states, definitely not possession. It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't actually know anything myself about possession other than what I've seen in the popular movies. So really, and a little bit that Barton says, which isn't much about that particular subject. So I'm basically know nothing on it, on possession in particular.
Yeah, I think that I've heard when I took my course from Father Nicola, who was an exorcist with the Catholic Church, we listened to some actual um, tapes of demonic possession that were currently on going on and the exorcisms that were happening, and certainly the sounds that came out of the person. Sometimes a 14-year-old girl sounded like nothing like a girl to start with or a 14-year-old. So yeah, the human body is pretty interesting what it can do, and the beliefs that people have can add to that. So if you don't believe that that can happen to you, and you have good healthy boundaries, and you believe that you're in charge of whatever happens in your body, then it's difficult to get into a state of acceptance to allow it to happen. But some people are very vulnerable and weak willed and easily influenced, and can be sort of talked into being in a state, I think. Currency Writer says, think electromagnetic currents and a receptor in the form as a brain. Some dude says, I was friends with a minor possessed. It was rather disturbing.
I would think it would be, yeah.
I had a case of a woman who was not possessed by an external spirit, but was possessed by a personality from a past life, which was interesting in and of itself, and had some of the similar effects in that she would have thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and do things she didn't remember doing when the other personality would take over. And it wasn't a psychiatric disorder like split or multiple personality disorder. It was a whole different kind of cause. And that was my main experience with going to the Hall of Records in the Acacia, because she asked for my help and I was led there or put there and shown what was happening. And it was pretty interesting. And that's the thing is like those kind of things, when I have those happen, there's always a reason. There's something that has instigated it, some need of mine or someone else's that has allowed it, the idea to open up in order for it to happen. So it's kind of interesting to work that way. Astra says a lot of what people think are demonic possessions are actually traumatized people having an episode. Yeah, that's undoubtedly true. Sandcat says possession is often good versus evil, God versus the devil. There has to be more to it than that, as I don't believe in the Christian God nor the devil. Well, I think when it happens to someone who does have those beliefs, that would be the core reason why it's happening, because they have those beliefs to start with.
Yeah, and the whole God versus the devil thing, wouldn't that be a ridiculous way to run a universe where everything is at war all the time, two major forces warring all the time?
And
That's
one
the
of them has
worst.
got to come out on
That's
top,
that, that's
otherwise all existence is doomed.
that's the
Yeah.
worst description of spirituality I can think of.
Well, also
All
you
I
can't trust yourself, your own instincts, or
Well,
anything
yeah,
else because
it's just all conflict.
everything's
There
trying to
has
trick
to be
you.
conflict. There's no unity. I mean, if you're not part of their group, they'll try to force you to be part of it by any means possible. I mean, yeah. Anyway, not going against that. Yes, the whole idea of the war, God and an anti-God. You know,
Or force and anti-force. It's like life anti-life, kind of.
But you know, the universe doesn't work that way, really.
Not really. Not in my experience,
No.
anyway. Astor says dissociative seizures, and it's wrong to re-traumatize people to sensationalize them. Yeah, no kidding. I totally agree. Beth says, I'm listening, y'all. I'm getting dinner ready. Good. It's good to eat. Some dude says at Sandcat, possession is just a spirit convincing your subconscious and conscious mind to be influenced by it. All right. Violet says, checking out again. Bye, guys. Bye,
Bye,
Violet.
Violet.
Astor says, yep, that worldview is neurotic. Sandcat says it upsets me when people are injured and even killed by priests doing exorcisms. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And they're promoting their own set of beliefs and imposing their version of reality onto someone else to the point where they die. It's just horrific. Beth says, so true with books, Ian. If someone's putting negative energy in the book, I pick it up and get rid of it.
Yeah, normally I do pretty good with banishing out old books I buy at a bookstore, but some of them are just so impregnated, just not worth it.
It's so much more effort
Yep.
than it's worth the result.
Well, and plus which it was just a grimoire, so
Yeah, it wasn't like
there's too many grimoires out there, you know. It wasn't like information I really needed or wanted. I don't do that kind of stuff. I'm just interested in it.
some dude says a lot of people live like reality is Warhammer, meaning that in the grim dark future there is only war and the laughter of thirsting gods. Ooh,
It's true.
that's a nihilistic attitude, right?
Yeah.
Astra says, yeah, these parents killed their 3-year-old daughter recently. Oh, that's just awful. That's even worse. I mean, a 3-year-old has no chance at all to defend or protect themselves. Chief Keef says in some cultures they even use possession for spiritual
Well, you
development.
know, that's a pretty valid point. Santeria is a good example of one where people are ridden by the gods, the goddesses, depending on who they're associated with.
Yeah, and I had that happen to me. I got rid by Oya. So that was kind of interesting, and I didn't care for it much. So
Yeah,
I guess that would be a form of possession.
that term refers to when the spirit being comes down, and a lot of times the person doesn't know what they did when they come out of it. They don't remember it when the spirit being was in possession of them. And so that's considered a positive thing in that case, in the case of Santeria, when they're inviting the spirit beings in.
Well, and that's a type of trance, mediumship.
Yeah, it can also be scary and it can be destructive sometimes if you get like the god of war comes down into you or that type of thing, you know,
Yeah.
Ogun or somebody, yeah. Or it can be bad for the people around Ogun. And apparently it can be bad if like sometimes a woman's spirit comes into a man and a man's spirit comes into a woman, and sometimes those are like,
Conflicting?
well, usually they're conflicting. The person is really conflicted about what they did while they were under the possession in the case of some of that. Cause,
Yeah. So that would be a form of spirit possession, but that's one that one volunteers for.
yeah.
So it's not the same thing as the kind that most people are talking about.
Yeah.
Astor says, yeah, these parents killed their 3-year-old daughter recently. Oh, I did that one already.
Yeah.
Astor says, trying to exorcise her because they were convinced she was possessed, so effed up. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Akusena says, namaste, everyone. Hi. Astor says, it happened at Charismatic Church. Astor says, or Thor possesses you.
Well, I wish I could throw a few
That could be
lightning
rather
bolts.
electric.
I'd like to throw some lightning bolts around a little bit, or maybe if I have Mjolnir. You think if I name my hammer Mjolnir, it'll
Yeah.
throw it at people?
Yeah.
I better use a rubber mallet because I'm not sure my aim is so good.
Yeah, that's true. Sandcat said 600 years ago I would have been subject to an exorcism just for having my own thoughts and speaking my mind. Well, yeah. I mean, seriously, not all that long ago, women had to have their hysters removed, which don't exist, for being hysterical. They were trying to calm us down. Didn't really work out that way to calm us down much. Did teach us that if we didn't do what we were told, bad things would happen, at least for a temporary time in history. But yeah, Astor says, I think we all would. We would all end up, yes, being exorcised. I would have been burned at the stake more than once. And probably still would if some people had their way.
Yeah, it's kind of frightening. we'll not go there. Yeah.
Well, it is kind of frightening because, it's like, it's one of those things that
Yeah, we've seen a
society's not that far from it.
we've seen a lot of violence towards witches and magical people. I mean, not we haven't personally been involved with it, but we've seen lots of rocks thrown through windows and things like that
Well, and witches
around here.
losing custody of their children
Yeah,
and losing their jobs because they asked for a day off. That was one of their holidays, and then someone figured out that was why they wanted that day off and didn't want to have them around because they were evil incarnate. It's like that whole thing in the Bible about by the fruits you shall know them. I figure that should apply. By your actions, you should be judged, not by your
yeah.
beliefs.
I agree too, because you can, believe all kinds of things, but how you act is a true measure of
That's in
who
my
you are.
opinion. Yeah. People's actions are a lot more important to me. They can say anything. They can say, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way," blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It wasn't what I intended, blah blah blah. But how they act tells me everything I need to know about their character. Uh, and Chief Keef says people are still capable of that. A lot of normal people seem to be on the edge of insanity. That's true.
Yeah, you only have to look at the political arena to see some of that.
Now, some dude says 8 billion people, 5,000 years of history, and we're still the same. Yep, unfortunately. Trey says, have you encountered any more astral government agents? No, not recently, although he
However, I just got worried
was
about it a
talking
couple
about
days.
that.
Just a couple days ago, I got worried that that was going to happen with the webs, the YouTube channel and stuff. If they think you're going to do something, maybe want you for remote viewing or something. But
They tried that once, and I was a no-go, so I think that they would leave me alone at this point. I'm too old to be malleable enough to be trained, one can hope. Beth says, Sandcat, I had visions of people burning for being so-called witches. They weren't, they spoke their own mind. Well, most of the people that were murdered during the burning times were probably not witches anyway. Not the
yeah,
kind that, not how we think of as witches, but that's what they were. They were independent thinkers and they didn't follow the rules that were set out by the church authority or what have you. And so they were considered dangerous because, they made people think. Gaga says, yeah, I find a lot of contradictions in the Bible, like Atem and Eve not mating until, or Adam and Eve not mating until after they ate the forbidden fruit. Just a reason for everyone to be born into sin, to me. Yeah, well, being the idea of original sin, I think, is a horrible thought because it starts you right off
yeah,
at the beginning that you have no hope, you have no chance, that there's only one path to salvation. And if you don't take it and recognize it, then you're going to go to a horrible place for all eternity. It's like not a very good sales pitch, but
yeah. At least I never had a trouble with wearing a pentagram. I mean, nobody's ever hassled me about that. I have one I wore for a long time. I also wore a universal hexagram for a long time, and
most people don't know what that is.
no.
Yeah, Astra says, yeah, I won't wear a pentacle, but maybe I could get away with a fairy star. Yeah, I think you could get away with a fairy star.
If anybody had asked about the universal hexagram, I probably would have just told them, "Oh, I'm just Jewish."
It's got 6 points, right? It's just a weird shaped
Yep.
Jewish star. Astra says, I live in a really religious town, so if I so much as wear a crystal, I'll get someone being nasty or closed off towards me. Really nuts. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sad. And
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people like that around here. Not so much a really religious town, but it's a really uh, backwater small place,
yeah, a lot of
and so we
religious,
get a lot of that.
right
Yeah.
wing conservative community
Yeah.
people in our town, and being different is certainly not on their agenda.
Yeah.
Is not approved.
Yeah.
Astra or Beth says to Sandcat Hearts. Julia says, or female landowners that had people wanting to confiscate their property. Yep. And Beth says, Julia, exactly. And Julia smiles at Beth. Yeah, that was pretty much definitely another reason. Astra says, wait, what do you mean, government astral agent? Do they meddle with high level clairvoyance? Well, I mean, they might notice us, but I don't think.
Siofra had an issue before where
I
there
had
was
a group
some.
mind that was after me. I left the
Yeah.
United States when I was like 19 or so, 19 or 20. I started getting followed by this entity that took possession of different people's bodies and was tracking me through the DC area. And it was part of a government program looking to recruit psychics for a secret agency thing. And I recognized them when they showed up. And I even had people that I was with notice these people who were looking at me and following me and so forth. So it wasn't just all in my head. Um, and I think that's one of the reasons why I went to Canada was to get away and get under the radar so that they couldn't track me up there. And if they could, they couldn't get to me because of other issues. But yeah, I told people up there about it and nobody believed me. And then I met someone else who had a similar experience where someone tried to recruit them for the psychic program. General, a U.S. general on an airplane. This guy was sitting next to, and he was trying to talk him into the idea. And so then I had someone at least who had a similar encounter. So it wasn't just me. And then, of course, when they came forward with all that information, with the Freedom of Information Act and so forth, and remote viewing came out, and I'm like, well, at least that was part of it.
Yeah, and
But there's more that's not there that's been classified, I'm sure.
if you want to watch a good, really funny movie on the subject, which is mostly a true story, watch The Men Who Stare at Goats. It has George Clooney in it as the main character, and it's really hysterically funny about the government's remote viewing program, and it's basically true. I assume some of it was a little fictionalized,
I
but
think I read an article that talked about how most of it wasn't fictionalized at
yes,
all.
and you can actually look up some of the documents and things online that they
Yeah.
talk about in there, the manifestos of the psychic warriors and things, or whatever it was. Yeah, it's been a long time ago, but yes, it's a good, funny movie on the subject.
And speaking of, like, astral agents of all kinds, I mean, I once accidentally tapped into a telepathic network, several of them at the same time, but only one of them responded. And it was the new Golden Dawn order that noticed my psychic intrusion and came to check me out because all of a sudden there was this astral guy in my apartment looking at me, and I looked at him. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know where you're from." And he's looking at me. He's going like, "Yeah, we don't have to worry about this one."
Yeah,
And
there's
then he
one.
left.
There's
So
a couple of black magical groups, one of which Barton talks about, which we won't go into details about, but he mentions it in his the autobiographical part of his book Frabato. And I did just enough research on the subject to find out that it sounds like a real thing, and this group really did exist and probably still does exist. So stay away from them.
yeah,
So I'm not going to go into any details on that. If you want to learn something about that, you can read his book Frabato. But if there's black magical groups going around doing that thing, there's no reason to believe that the government is not involved in magical practices somehow. I
yeah,
suspect they are, and I don't want to investigate that into things myself in case I might find out something or stir up something.
get noticed.
I'm too old. I don't have the time to deal with stuff like that. I just want to live out and live a happy life. And
SL says my very religious family keeps asking me if my pentacle is the Star of David. I just say no and change the subject. It's a good thing I'm not in an area where they have ever seen it, so they don't know it's associated with witchcraft. Well, good. So Chief Keef retracted a couple of things. Maybe he'll get back in there. Kind of great posting it. Sandcat says I wear a pentagram. I wear it with a cross that was my grand's. Grand is a raving Christian, but I don't wear it as a Christian symbol, rather as a memento of my grand. She just turned 95. Ooh. Sandcat says, ooh, the Albert Bender story is so interesting. Okay.
so yeah, this kind of Chief Keef kind of retracted his message, but he talked about the Hat Man, and that's apparently being seen. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't bring it up.
Yeah, if he retracted it, we probably
Yeah,
don't want to talk about it.
I'll leave that alone. But
Okay.
I did Google it before you uh, retracted your message, and I thought it looked sort of interesting on the surface. Yeah.
SL says I wear my grandma's religious medal for the same reason. Sandcat says hearts to SL, and SL says hearts back. Astor says helicopters come out and fly over our complex after me and my neighbor play with the UFOs. They kind of kill the vibe, and sometimes they're trying to watch us with the UFOs.
Yeah, we have the Coast Guard flies over our house occasionally, and their helicopters are really loud.
We had an airplane fly over just before we started the show, and I've never actually heard an airplane this close to our house, so I was a little bit concerned. Beth says, I would have been burned. My own mind grows herbs, live around nature spirits. Yep. And Chief Keef says, laugh my ass off. Pastor says, I don't want any trouble. I just want to enjoy my fairies and bake cookies.
Kind of how
Yay.
I feel, you know.
I like the cookies.
I'm too old to be
And I like
all
to
this
enjoy the
stuff.
fairies
Yep.
too. Astor says, I am a believer. I love UFO stories. Gaga says, depending on the good works you did on earth determines on how magnificent your blessings will be in heaven according to the Bible. But what about the people that die too young, like at 2 months old? Well, there's just too many things like that to even discuss.
Well, yeah, the Bible has so many errors in translation and everything else. I don't think it's even, what it could have been if it had all the original texts and stuff. I think there were some real Kabbalistic mysteries hidden in there, but whether any of them actually remain or anything, you know.
Beth says, Ian, I agree completely, and I'm not investigating either.
Yeah.
Chief says, I retracted it for others just in case. Felt astral agency territory like. Yeah, I gotta watch out for those guys.
Yeah.
Sandcat says, if I retract a message, it's because autocorrect has struck again. Yeah, autocorrect is horrible.
Sometimes it's pretty funny.
Astor says, laugh out loud. That's funny. The government be creeping.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, they were pretty serious about their remote viewing program and stuff. And yeah, anyway.
Some dude says at Gaga you can retain your memory through certain processes after death. I can't argue that. I'm not being dead at the moment and having remembered a whole bunch of stuff after I came back, so it's a possibility. I remembered a couple of deaths too. It's kind of interesting. One in particular, when I was an earthbound spirit with unfinished business for a while. That was weird.
Yeah, for those who might not know, Kundalini awakening, when it reaches a certain point, naturally starts bringing back your old past life memories and things. Um, if you're letting it develop naturally and stuff, you'll end up knowing your past lives and things. I don't have any that I remember. I have some suspicions because of things that I feel irrationally connected to.
And also abilities that he's been able to do certain things that he knows nothing about.
Yeah.
That seems to be a pretty strong indication, in my view, of a reincarnation memory.
Yeah. Still doesn't give me any ideas of what or where. I mean, some vague idea. Feel real connected to Indian stuff, and also a strange Japanese type of thing, but I don't really feel attracted to their culture at all, except for the practices like Zen and the martial arts a lot.
So Chief Keef says, wasn't John C. Lilly involved with those remote viewing projects as well, the dolphin guy? I think he might have been. I watched a documentary about him. I'm trying to remember if they mentioned that or not. I'd have to look it up again.
Yeah, well, the
but
movie...
I think the whole point of the dolphin experiment was to learn how to get the dolphins to do what we wanted as, ocean spies and things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it might be. It's been long enough since I watched the movie. I don't remember it really well, except it was really funny. And the reason they were staring at goats is to try to kill the goats psychically.
With their mind, and one of them died.
Yeah.
Julia says, I always believed and still do that once you die that you are able to learn the truth of how things are, like you get past prejudices and cultural views of your current life. Well, I certainly saw, they come as thought forms and represent highlights and the things that you feel are the most important, either for good or for ill, depending on your belief system. I sent myself to hell in that life once I actually crossed over for a period of time. So, that's because I believed in it at the time. Beth says, I do have visions of old institutions on a global scale being dismantled. I don't know the timeline. Astra says, my friend who's in her 60s said she used to roll her pencil on her desk with her mind when she was 5. And one day, men in black tried to recruit her. Her parents moved for 6 years every few months. Well, that would make sense.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've seen enough stuff that the government has actually done to think that they are, or at least have pursued magical practices and psychic assassins and stuff in the past, and probably still are, really, and I just don't want to come on their radar by any means whatsoever. Not even something I would want to get involved with ever.
Trey says, what do you do when you want to instantly raise your vibration? I go outside and commune with this nature. It's what I do, and meditate. I'm in an instant alpha state if I close my eyes, and so I don't have to do much. All I have to do is close my eyes, and after years of practicing it like that, it just works. So change my state of awareness is a fairly simple process at this point. But for people who are struggling, going outside and breathing the air in and talking to a tree or sitting under a tree and connecting to the whole biosphere that's around us and so forth, it's definitely a sort of a guaranteed method in my opinion. Gaga says, I heard getting your body cremated helps you reincarnate faster. What's your take on that?
I honestly doubt if it makes any difference
I doubt it
whatsoever.
makes any difference at all because once you actually are gone, you're not connected to the body anymore. You're completely separated from it. I mean, in my case, when I was earthbound, I was on my grave, so that would have stopped that from happening. But the reason I was on my grave wasn't because my body was there, but because my dog was there, and I didn't want to leave my dog alone. So, yeah, if there was no dog, it wouldn't have happened that way. So, Sophia says, is there any technique to remember past lives?
Yes, but Barton recommends being careful with that because chances are if you truly remember it well enough, you can end up with having remorse for the things you did in past lives and things like that, and you can make your current life a living hell. But there are several techniques. Uh, there's one that's a Buddhist technique where you learn to think backwards. You start where you're at and you think backwards through your day and you increase that day after day. So you think backwards farther and farther each time until you eventually think back beyond your birth and remember your death and things like that. I haven't really tried it to see if it works. It's supposedly a functional technique if you meditate on it. And then Barton gives some stuff, but it requires self-development through his processes before you can use those methods.
And I agree, it's a bad idea to try and encourage yourself to remember past lives because I can tell you from personal experience, the first ones you remember will not be pleasant or enjoyable or fun in any way whatsoever if you're actually remembering your past lives.
And also, if you're living life right, you're probably in. You should theoretically more or less be in the best life of your whole series that you're living now. So anything you remember in your past life is probably going to be worse lives than you're in now. You're not going to remember being King Edwards or somebody.
Yeah.
Chances are.
Well, and even if you do, that's probably a
Probably, yeah.
fantasy. And that's the thing is like, there's a lot of people that think that they were famous people. It's like, is that because they have a lack in the life that they're in?
Nothing to do with King Edwards, just the first thing that popped into my head.
Yeah. Aha! That's an indication. Aha! But yeah, being in the life that you're in is that's the whole point of being in a life is to be present in the life that you're in. I think the reason I remembered past lives when the time I was little was because it was part of what I was supposed to accomplish. It's like it gave me a certain amount of resiliency in the horrific family upbringing and experiences I had with being tortured and so forth, to know that I had been here before, both in good and bad ways, because I remembered being burned at the stake, plus I remembered a more pleasant experience. And so I had like a foundation of experience that no one had told me about to draw upon. And but that was just sort of part of the way I am. And
Yeah,
each one I've remembered has usually been because I needed to for one reason or another in this life. It was like important to the life I'm living now that I remember that. So,
I just wanted to add one little thing that if you wanted to check out that technique, the version I know of written down is in a thing called The Training of the Mind by Alan Bennett. He was a contemporary of Crowley's, so you can find it in like Crowley's Equinox and some other stuff.
and Astra added to the story about the young girl to get away from the government trying to recruit her. She's not crazy or a liar, so I believe her. It's certainly plausible. Sandcat says, how can I find out who my cat was in a past life? He's 7 and has always stared at us for hours. It's always been disturbing. I'm sure he's unhappy being a cat. I think I'll meditate on it. Sounds like a plan. Beth says, past lives and current lives I've asked to be unveiled are coming up more than usual. I just breathe through it. Chief Keefe says, I do have to ask, are y'all familiar with that fellow I requested you guys look up, the hat guy? I don't want to get to too much detail.
No, this was actually the first I've run across it, so I'll read up about it and see what I think.
Astra says, yeah, me neither. I don't care about government affairs. Astra says, and the aliens have not told me anything because I have a girl's mouth. Okay. I don't want to remember my past lives. And that's perfectly
Yeah,
fine.
I kind of agree, but I also have to think it would be really nice to remember how to do some of these things that are giving me so much problem. Like, did I master this concentration exercise back in the past and I could just bring that forward? Or, some abilities and things I learned. Maybe I spoke French in a past life. If I could just bring that through and speak French,
I
or
always thought,
something.
since I knew I was studied herbs and was a woman who lived in the woods in the hut, it'd be nice if I just instantly knew
Yeah.
all that knowledge too.
And
Have to
that
redo it.
that type of thing is possible. But I'm certainly nowhere. I can't remember anything from past life. But yeah.
Yeah. Beth says, I've done that one. I don't recommend it at all. Julia says, I think the glimmers of past life recall that happen spontaneously or are triggered by something in this lifetime are allowed to come through, or ways my higher self as some item it tries to help me.
Well,
Yeah,
yes,
I
and
think
and
so.
and I'd say personally for myself, I do not try to investigate my past memories, but I feel that if they come up naturally without me forcing them to happen, then they're acceptable and I can work with that.
Yeah. Or in a dream.
Yeah,
I've gotten some past lives memories in dreams
I
before.
feel like if they come up naturally, because the Kundalini will do that if it's developing right and you reach a certain point, you'll start having past life memories and they'll come up naturally. In that case, they're not harmful because you've already reached a state where those aren't going to harm you.
Yeah.
And actually, that's another way. Um, if you can put yourself in I think those memories would come up if you develop to a state where you wouldn't be harmed by the karma
Hmm.
of remembering them and stuff.
Beth says, I can be in the kitchen cooking or washing dishes and a past life memory will pop up. And Astor says, that's a good point, Ian. Sophia says, why there is people that remember past life? Is that a bug in the system? No. There is no system like that to have a bug. It's like we're all these individually evolving people and spirit beings and so forth, and some of us have more access than others. Currency writer says a trip, or Riddler says a trip down the fractal time spiral. Julia says maybe sometimes this is how you were able to deal with the situation, or why you should never do this again. Yep. And Astor says, is there a way to protect yourself from astral spies? Get really good at setting boundaries and get some spirit protectors that'll whack them if they come by. Like we've got Garuda, who's kind of our protector at this point.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways. You just have to dig around and decide what you want to use. You can make yourself invisible. You can make a shield. You can make something to keep them out. Make your house invisible with the Akasha. There's all kinds of potential methods.
Sophia says, I'm just curious about past lives because I feel like an alien most of the time. I used to feel like an alien too. And I realized the reason I felt like an alien was because the people I could see, hear, and interact with were nothing like me. They are actually not human beings, in my opinion. My definition of human. I did a whole video on what you need to do to become a human being. And you belong in this biosphere. If you were born here, you're part of this. And if you're feeling like an alien, it just means that you haven't been able to make that distinction between how you feel so different, which is what we identify as alien, is something different, and being a part of here. We need those of us who are different. And we need those of us who are different to know that we belong here so we can take this back and help other people to come back to being a part of the biosphere, part of the biosystem, part of reality. And it might just hopefully heal humanity in a real way and maybe bring about some kind of a paradigm shift. So I consider that that's our duty as beings that are different, to try and help each other through that as much as we can. Sandcat says, I drowned in a past life and very scared of deep water. I also had something happen to me in a very old car with dark purple vinyl seats. I can't remember the details, but the memories have stayed. Yeah, and my daughter and my granddaughter both are afraid of seeing water without being able to see an edge, and that seems to be the case. Astra says, nice. I have a lot of beings around me. I should just ask my guides. I'm not sure who my guides are yet. And Beth says, Siofra, yes. And yes, we've come to the end of our show. It's a good place to stop. Astra says, I'm proud to be a human. I don't think I'm a starseed. And, you know, there's no reason why we can't do this ourselves. We don't have to have help from some alien civilization on the other side of the universe to come and help us out. We need to actually do the work on our own. Julia says, thank you all for being here. This group is a wonderful reminder of human potential, and the connection is important. Siofra and Ian, bless you both for this channel. Much love. Thank you. Chief Keef says, has anyone else ever visited places in the astral that seem like gathering places? We'll have to talk about that next time, and the answer is yes.
And there definitely are some.
And there definitely are some. Sandcat says, Astra, I'm an alien too. I don't fit in my community and haven't found my people, which is why I love Siofra's magical alcove. Thank you, Sandcat. I'm glad you can feel comfortable here. And Ian says, thank you all for this wonderful live feed. You're all great. Grateful Alice says, have a great day, everyone. Marshall says, seeing everyone as loved ones helps manifest that. Okay, so bye, everybody. Have yourself a fantastic week. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Okay? So blessed be one and all.
Blessed be.
Whoops.